point, I think it's important for the public and for the board to hear from our county registrar reporter, being Logan, to help us understand what those challenges and concerns have been. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I am Dean Logan, the registrar reporter, county clerk here in Los Angeles County, and I appreciate the opportunity to come this morning to share with you some information about the June 7th presidential primary election. As was stated in your introductory remarks, this was an extraordinary election. The presidential primary is the most complex election that we conduct in the state of California, and there are elements of it that by design are challenging, certainly challenging for voters, cumbersome for poll workers, and difficult to administer. I think we talked with each of your offices in advance of the election about those things. We took on extraordinary measures to try and address those issues, but I think it's important to acknowledge today that we recognize that there were issues that came out during the election. We're working to address those. We've tried very transparently to address those. I spent a considerable amount of my time on election day, even directly corresponding with voters through social media to address those issues as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to come and walk through the assertions that have been made about the election, let you know the steps we've taken, what we did before the election, and also I'll conclude with some comments on some things that I think that we can take care of going forward. Just a little bit of context to get us started. I think it's to recognize again that this is a unique election. It's run differently than our typical elections. It only happens every 4 years. We had a lot of new voters who had never voted in a presidential primary or a partisan primary in California, and certainly in the time frame since we moved to the top 2 primary system. So this is the first time many voters ever experienced an election where they had to have a party-specific ballot. That was further complicated by the fact that the major political parties make a decision based on their rules on which non-partisan voters can participate in their primary, and those rules were different in the 2 major parties in this election. We have 4,511 polling places in LA County spread out over 4,000 square miles. We rely on the work of 22,300 very dedicated and very critically important poll workers to deliver those services on election day. So as I go through these issues, I will try to again touch on them and then respond to questions. I do want to mention in particular, because I know that you have all been informed, I'm aware of a particularly egregious circumstance at a polling place in Echo Park. There's a video that has gone out about that. I want you to know that we are looking at that very, very closely. During the post-election canvass, I'm having all of the poll workers who worked at that polling place interviewed. I'm talking to the facility manager at that location, and we are looking for a complete record of that, and we will have that available by the time we certify the election. So again, just to launch into this, I think it's important to note that voting is an individual act, but it has cumulative impact. It requires significant resources deployed in a short period of time over a great distance. It also relies on transparency, security, and accountability. And I think we achieved that cumulative impact with this election, or are achieving that. We still have ways to go in terms of certifying it. But I also want to recognize that for any individual voter who encountered difficulties or challenges in the act of voting on election day, the cumulative impact does not diminish the impact of the individual voter, and we know that that's our obligation to meet that in the future and going forward. So, just to go through these, one of the assertions is that there were multiple problems at polling places throughout Los Angeles County. Again, I think that that's a broad statement. I think it refers to the complications that were associated with the surge of new voters, many of whom were unfamiliar with the party-specific primary rules. There was also an increase in party affiliation changes leading right up to the election, which meant that we were producing election materials and supplies at the same time that we were making changes to individual voter registrations. So then providing supplemental supplies to those polling places, because we're still relying on a very manual election system. It meant for the poll workers, they had to navigate 10 different ballot styles at each of those 4,500 polling locations. And for a nonpartisan voter, it meant that they had to make a decision between 4 options of which ballot to receive and to mark in the roster. So again, there were overlapping time frames and processes that added to the cumbersome nature of those. I think those are captured in the additional issues that we're going to go through, and I think that there were mitigating circumstances in most of those. There was reference made to voting machines at the precincts failed throughout the county. I think first, again, context, it's important to know that the machines, the equipment that is at our polling places is not vote counting equipment. That is not the equipment that counts the votes that are cast on election day. Those are all counted centrally back in Norwalk at our headquarters. What those machines are there for is to scan the ballot to alert the voter of marking errors. So if they overvoted on a particular contest, or if their ballot was being read as entirely blank, to give that voter a second chance to go back and correct those issues before depositing their vote into the ballot box. An important feature, distinct from actually counting the vote. We do know that on deployment, those scanners at the polling places required a password that had to be deployed out to all of the polling places early on election morning. That did delay the startup at some locations, and we're looking into the complication that caused that. Our records show that the vast majority of those were up and running and functional. Voting should not stop as a result of that. There are provisions in our training and in our procedures to say that the voting, issuing of ballots, collecting of ballots, and voting continues despite any issues with that equipment. I'm aware of 67 of those units that had to be replaced throughout the day. Those are from teams that were deployed directly from my office. We also have regional distribution centers that have equipment out in the field that may have been working with those as well. So I don't have the final numbers on all of that, but I do know that there were at least 67 that were replaced throughout the day. Second issue, or next issue I'll bring up, is that voters were listed in the roster with the wrong political party selection or not listed at all. As noted earlier, I think this relates primarily to party changes made leading up to the election or new registrations that were processed leading up to the election. Each of those 4,500 polling locations had a roster of voters for their precinct and then 2 supplemental rosters for their precinct that were issued leading up to the election day. If those were not all present at the table, or if they didn't check all 3 of those, that could be a cause for somebody to be missed in the roster. If somebody changed their party very late in the process, they could have been listed in the original roster with their previous party affiliation, and if they didn't go to the supplemental roster to see that they're now listed with another party, that could cause that issue as well. Again, these are complications that a more modernized voting system ought to compensate for. There were some issues around this, some assertions that there was mass purging of voters in LA County or mass party changes made against the will of voters. I have not seen any evidence of that. I do think that a lot of new registrations come in through petition drives, and we need to look back, and we do this, we need to look back at the original document of registration to see how the party selection was made and to share that with the voters. I'm also aware, at least anecdotally, of a number of voters that I spoke to directly, personally on election day, who believed that they were registered with one party, but I actually pulled up the image of their document and they registered to vote using the California online voter registration system. And I could see the party selection that was marked there as well. So I think some of this is that in most elections, your ballot choice is not determined by that party selection. So I think there was some confusion around that. Voters indicated that they were listed as receiving a vote by mail ballot that they did not receive or request. This is another example where, according to the rules in the state of California, if we show that a vote by mail ballot was issued to you as a voter and you show up at a polling place to vote on election day, if you can surrender that vote by mail ballot, we can issue you a regular ballot. If you don't have that vote by mail ballot to surrender, we have to issue you a provisional ballot. This is the safeguard to make sure that voters don't vote both at the polls and through the mail. Again, anecdotal stories of people who believe that they were listed as vote by mail voters who say they've never requested to be vote by mail voters. Again, I looked at several images of documents where that box was checked. I think that there was an issue in California when online voter registration first went into effect. I think that checkbox was easily checked without people really recognizing what they were doing. In other words, it followed, are you 18 years old? Check yes. Are you a United States citizen? Check yes. Do you want to be a permanent vote-by-mail voter? And I think a lot of people just checked that last box. That has since changed. In the last year, the California Secretary of State has changed that interview process, but I do believe that that is one of the symptoms to that particular issue. There was a ballot shortage at some polling locations. This was an issue that was raised during the weekend leading up to the election. We are aware of isolated incidences where we had emergency openings, an emergency opening at the polling places where the poll worker, the inspector, is not able to show up election morning, and they are the ones who have the supplies for that precinct, so we have to deploy emergency supplies. Usually that means just getting emergency generic ballots out to the polling place so that voting can begin, and then we prepare a full set of supplies and get those out midday. I can also share with you that we did analysis the weekend before the election, and we did print additional regular ballots for about 30 precincts that on election day we sent out to those precincts using LA County Sheriff's Patrol to get those out in anticipation of those shortages. And at the end of the day, I believe there were a handful, a small number of precincts out of 4,500 that ultimately had to switch over to use emergency ballots for certain ballot stock. Again, as we certify the election, we'll have more concrete records on that. There are too many ballots left to be counted. This is one that continues to get a lot of attention. The reality in California, because we have a large number of voters who vote by mail and we have a very open election system, the reality is that it typically in a statewide election, primary or general, 1/3 of the votes that will be counted in the election still remain to be counted after election day. This election is no exception to that. We estimated the day after the election approximately 600,000 ballots in LA County that remain to be processed. That's a combination of vote-by-mail ballots that were dropped off at polling places on election day, provisional ballots that were cast at polling places that will be checked and those that are validated will be counted, and vote-by-mail ballots that came in the mail during the final days. And this was the first election season where the new law in California that allows for vote-by-mail ballots that are postmarked on election day but received within 3 days of the election remain valid as well. We did our first update of election results on Friday. We'll do our second one this afternoon and again Friday this week, and we'll do that twice a week through the canvass period. Unfortunate area in this particular campaign season or election where a lot of misinformation was out there. We are at the tail end of the presidential primary cycle in the nation, and California has very open provisional ballot regulations as opposed to many states that have restrictive provisional ballot rules. Provisional ballots in California are the fail-safe method of voting. I'm not going to pretend to say that it's a great experience to get a provisional ballot, but what I will tell you is that the provisional ballots are a form of enfranchisement in California. They are that fail-safe that says if you're at a polling place and they can't find you in the roster, they're not going to turn you away. They're going to allow you to vote. If you say that you did not return a vote-by-mail ballot, but for some reason the record shows that you did, we're again not going to turn you away, say you can't vote. We're going to give you a provisional ballot so that we can research that. Statistically in LA County and across California, but LA County specifically, 85 to 90% of provisional ballots are validated and counted during the certification period. The number of provisional ballots issued in this primary, while high, was not exceedingly high compared to other high-profile, high-volume elections. And again, given the nature of the campaign and the presence of presidential candidates here in the county leading up to this election, I think at the end of this canvass, the validity of those provisional ballots will turn out to be an indication that we made sure that every valid vote was counted in LA County. Again, I will say that our hope in the future is for a more modernized system that would minimize the need for provisional ballots, but comparatively to other states where they have very low rates of validation, California does validate and count provisional ballots at a very high rate. Vote counting has been slower than usual. I think this was an assertion made specifically about election night. We did work through election night. I think our official, semi-official final result didn't come out till about 5 in the morning the day after the election. Part of that is simply the geography of this county. 4,500 locations that have to get back centrally to Norwalk. We utilize helicopters through the LA County Sheriff's Department and patrol cars to do that. going first from those 4,500 locations to 72 check-in centers and then back to normal. We did employ some new ballot accountability features in our ballot path at the central headquarters this year. Those were intended to ensure that we could account for all the ballots that went through all of those changes. That did slow the process down, as well as a higher number of write-in votes. So we will analyze those issues and ensure that we take steps to increase the speed to the extent we can without sacrificing accuracy and accountability in the November election. Again, the post-election canvases are on schedule and are operating as public. This one, LA County called the election before all votes were counted. I want to be really clear on the record here that LA County, the Registrar's Office or the county in general, we're not in the business of calling the outcome of the election. We don't do that. We count the votes and we certify the votes. And by law, there's a 30-day period post-election process to do that. The election results are not certified and official in LA County until that process is done. So while the media, of course, in this particular presidential campaign environment, was eager to make calls about the election results, that is not a process that we have any official role in. So again, just to summarize, we are a county, we are the largest elections jurisdiction in the United States. We have 4.8 million registered voters, about 1.7 million of those who are permanent vote-by-mail voters, spread out of 4,500 locations on election day. Our system is, in California, I will say that California has made great strides in its election laws, opening up the election process, ensuring that voters have access to voter registration, that they have access to options for receiving a ballot. Where we have more work to do in the state of California, and LA County has been working on this very hard, is matching that openness with a process on election day that allows for that to happen efficiently. So it doesn't make sense that we have voter registration that stays open until 15 days before the election, but we have to print those rosters 25 days before the election. We should have a system where those poll workers have access to look up that information in real time and get it. And we have a plan to get there. It's just going to take time to do that. So again, I just want to state that we are working very hard on the post-election certification. We'll count a high number of additional ballots today. We take very seriously the reports of issues that people encountered on election day. We know that, again, in the vast majority of our locations, we believe and have a good record that things operated well. But again, that doesn't change the individual impact for a voter, especially a new voter who is not familiar with the process. And we will continue to do what we believe is necessary to improve that process and serve the voters of the lake.
The problem in the ballots the sample ballots being received in time for people to respond by requesting for an absentee ballot. I know at my home we didn't get a ballot until about 14 days before the election.
So on the sample ballot mailings, legally those have to be out by 10 days before the election. I agree with you, that is not enough time for a voter to turn that around with a vote-by-mail request. We try to compensate for that through online vote-by-mail request and through a will call ballot program that we piloted for this election. I think that worked well in this election. We'll probably expand that for November. I also think in November, because we had different party ballots, so there were so many versions of the sample ballot based on the partisan primary, that delayed the production and distribution of those. We should not experience that in November because it is a single ballot.
And of the approximately 60,000 ballots still to be counted, and already counted approximately 30,000?
We counted 66,000 additional ballots on Friday. I don't have the count for today. Today's count should be significantly more than that.
So you're going to be releasing those results every Tuesday and Friday?
Correct. So we will start at 1 o'clock this afternoon. We'll start today's run. As soon as we finish all the ballots that are ready to be counted, we will publish that report and put it out in the media and social media.
So you probably have at least 2 more weeks of counting.
That's correct. We will go through, we are scheduled to certify the election on July 1st. Again, this week and next week will be large updates. As we get further towards the end of the certification, it becomes the more tedious ballots that take further review. We do exhaust a lot of effort to make sure that every ballot vote is counted, and we will be finished on July 1st.
And when you release your ballots count, will you also release how many have to still be counted in each of the various areas of the county? Or would just be a raw number?
We will, when we do the release twice a week, we will include an updated estimate on the number of ballots that remain to be processed. Getting that down to the individual district level can be difficult. We have the ability to do that. What we typically do is take specific requests for specific districts, and then we have reports prepared based on that. Typically that is around the contests, of course, that are closed.
And the release time is at 4:30?
We start the update at 1 o'clock, and then we release as soon as that's done. So today it is likely to be 4:30 because of the volume. As we get further in the canvas, that will probably be earlier on this day.
Thank you.
Supervisor Q?
Dean, we talked a lot about what we were thinking of doing for the future. We were looking to the 2018 election, of course, beyond. And you were talking about various things to consider, one of which was expanding the number of days that, which of course we will all have to agree to so that people could vote over a weekend, and various numbers of ways that people could enter their ballots. Do you think that that will more complicate or uncomplicate the kinds of issues we've had? I understand in the gubernatorial election, we don't have the same kind of partisan issue as we do with the federal rules about presidential primaries. But do you think that some of that will help by sort of smoothing out people coming and having more time?
I do. I think the model of voting that we envision in the future, and we've done considerable research on this, and there's actually legislation pending in Sacramento. I will go at the end of this month to testify on a bill that helps move that as a local option. So that will come back here to this board when and if we decide to move that direction in LA. That model is based on moving away from individual single polling places, so you as a voter only have one option of where to go to vote on election day in your neighborhood, to a vote center environment that would allow you to go to one of several hundred locations located throughout the county in a 10-day period. And those locations could increase in number leading up to election day. So 10 days out before the election, there may be, I'm just throwing these numbers out now because they're still working on the formulas, but there may be 400 locations. But as we get to the weekend before the election, that would increase to maybe 600 or 700 locations that would be available all the way through election day. You as a voter could go to any one of those locations. All of those locations would have real-time access to the voter file. And in fact, in California, the law is already on the books that once that's in place, we will also have same-day voter registration. So if there is any question about your party choice or the address you're registered to vote at, you could change that on-site at the time of voting and have that updated on a real-time basis. And we would know that you voted in place A, so if you showed up in place B, we wouldn't let you vote again. That process, augmented with vote by mail, I believe simplifies the process, increases access, and responds to the manner in which our electorate functions on a regular basis. It gives them options and choices that the current system doesn't. And certainly for poll workers and election administrators, it eliminates a lot of these manual processes that are just subject to human error.
I think it also behooves us to think about for 2020 that every presidential primary and presidential general, we could have a repeat of what has happened. As a matter of fact, we want to, in a way, in terms of a lot of people signing up to vote.
Absolutely.
I think it's very important for people to sign up to vote. But as you pointed out, and as I saw even in my own area, and people emailing me, what do I do? A lot of people don't really know it. They signed up to vote, they've not voted before, a lot of young voters. And they don't feel that they were really told sufficiently what it would mean. For instance, if they signed up and they got a ballot by mail, that they were supposed to bring it with them if they decided not to mail it in. I don't read everything that comes on my electricity bill, and they always say, well, we told you. But I think it's going to have to be the case that we somehow, big print and red print, some of those important things for the voter, because just taking into account people do not pay attention when something is not known to them. They need to be told that, I mean, when you send out a campaign mailer, you do it 5 times because they tell you nobody's going to even remember your name unless you send them 5 things. And I have to apologize to the people who remember the first time because they hate getting all that paper. But I think it is important that we continue to emphasize it really early on. You know, if you register by mail and then don't vote by mail, bring it with you.
I agree with that. That is, by the way, that is another function that in the vote center environment that would go away because we would be able to in real time suspend that vote by mail ballot, so you wouldn't have to have it with you.
So
but I
you
completely
would invalidate the vote by mail ballot that hadn't come in yet,
correct.
and then people could vote with a regular ballot.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just want to comment that I share your view. I think that if you step back and look at the way the primary system works, it was not designed with voters in mind. It was designed around the function of nominating under party rules. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's very confusing for voters. And those rules change every 4 years. So we have not had the same kind of primary in California consistently over 2 periods of time for decades. So those rules do change. And
I think we're going to have to do something about this independent party issue.
Yes.
I mean, people really believe they're independent. So
Yes.
you know, I think people actually should know when they register for a party, but okay. But I understand people think I'm an independent, I'll register independent. I don't know what that party thing means. Maybe we'll make it clearer, although, you know, if you make something clear, I have to say, I don't think it was our fault that there was an independent party on the ballot, and it was very confusing. It didn't even occur to me that people would register with that party rather than no political preference or decline to state or something. But, you know, sometimes we have to think about what will occur to people, and I certainly agree with the people in the audience about that. I want to take positive initial steps for the next time and the next time and the next time. And I don't even know what, you know, I always think we should hire, I guess now they're called hacktivists, but somebody who will go through and go, here's everything that I could possibly do wrong, given this ballot, in terms of what I'm thinking. And then, you know, see if we can avoid it.
I will say that Logan and his folks have, I think, done a really good job, because as soon as we got media attention that there were some issues, I know he stepped up and did a lot of, I don't know how many interviews he did and being out there. Certainly, we've learned a lot, and I tend to agree that the more information you can have ahead of time, because we got a lot of calls as well regarding confusion about having to carry an absentee ballot in so that you could vote. There were a lot of people that left that on the counter or cleaned up their kitchen, you know, counter, and they don't know where they put it. That was a problem, I'm sure. But more importantly, the designation as an independent vote, I agree. American independent is not the same as an independent, and that obviously has to be cleared up before we go through this again. We're going to see this happen in the next 4 years. But again, I appreciate and applaud what you're doing. I think all of us are learning so much about this process. And what I am really excited about is that so many people wanted to exercise their right. And we've got to make that comfortable and plausible for them. And I like the idea that we're moving towards an area where people can just go to a center and be able to do that. I remember back we had some test pilot programs. I know at West Covina Library we had a system in place, so even though it was a couple of miles from me, I could still go there and vote right there and not have to worry about paper or anything. And if it was convenient, it would. So just thinking outside of the box again and grab are there any questions? We have over 50 speakers, so this item, while it's very important, we're going to allow people to speak for 1 minute.